Hi, I'm Soumya. I'm the founder of Rent to Read, an online book rental platform for children's books. We started this with a mission to bring back the love for reading and love for books in our children's lives by making them affordable, accessible, and hassle free for parents. Now, we are starting a podcast series called The Reading Lens, one of its kind, where we will talk about books and beyond, building habits and raising joyful readers. We will have experts from the sector, and this would be a fun space. And welcome to the first episode of The Reading Lens. For the first episode, we have a very special guest, Miss Upasna Punj. So, Upasna is a digital wellness coach, a youth mentor, trainer, and works with schools and parents to raise screen smart children. After working in the corporate sector for 20 years, she decided to use all that knowledge to empower and educate parents and children to make the right choices. Welcome, Upasna, to the Reading Lens. Such a pleasure to have you, and thank you for taking your time out.
Thank you so much for having me, Soumya. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, thank you. So, tell us a little bit about your journey. How did you, after 20 years in the corporate, how did you decide to become a digital wellness coach?
Yes.
How did that transition happen?
Absolutely. Happy to share that. And, before that, I'm so glad that we are having these conversations, taking collective action as parents, educators, as a society to really guide our children, because I don't think it's any more about restricting screens. I think it's about empowering our children. It's about learning how to navigate it with safety and with mindfulness so that it empowers us and does not consume us. So I'm very happy to be here, have this conversation with you, and just to share a little bit about my journey. So as you rightly said, I spent 20 plus years in the corporate world across different roles in leadership, and I'm also a chartered accountant. And one thing that really stood out during my professional experience was the fact that academic excellence alone does not guarantee success and happiness in life, right? It's the important life skills that shape your mindset. And be it the largest of the transformation programs, your corporate programs or your personal life, it's the mindset that shapes you. It's the mindset that differentiates success from a failure. And I also was very aware that, the experiences that we have as a child form the basis of everything we do as an adult. So when I became a parent myself, I think the one thing that I was very clear to build these life skills and all of that and the importance of that. But the one thing I wasn't prepared for was the digital invasion in the lives of our children, right? We did not grow up with these
Right.
things. And
You were navigating the digital world yourself.
exactly, we're still figuring it out
Yeah.
ourselves,
Yeah, still figuring
and
it out. Absolutely.
what happened was that for most of us raising teens or tweens now, I think COVID happened at a time when our children were at the very crucial developmental milestone of their age, must have been around 8 or 9 years. And at
Yeah,
that
yeah.
time, we kind of threw our children into a digital ocean without teaching them how to swim. So our children were using screens for their online classes, for connecting with each other, for so many of their things. And there is even research that says that post 2020, post the pandemic, there was a real big surge in the use of screens by children and the impact on their mental health. And screens have been a huge part of that. So that happened, and of course, as most of the parents, I tried to handle it, in the traditional methods of parenting, restricting or trying to fight them. But and I realized that there definitely is a better way, and that is when I started to research, learn more about it, tried different ways in my own house. And I also was very aware of the fact that, we are living in an environment immersed in screens. So it's not just about teaching your child, it's not about teaching just one child in isolation, it's about the environment. And, because of course, our
Yes,
children are the
absolutely.
average of the five people they'll surround themselves with. We all know that.
Yeah, yeah.
So, that is when I decided to build a community of like-minded people who are willing to navigate this for themselves and for their children with safety and with mindfulness. And that's how Live Your Bachpan, my venture, was born.
Thank you. That's a wonderful journey. Diving deep into the subject. So when we talk about screens, what exactly happens? So why are screens so hard to resist, and what happens? How does it change our minds and impacts us?
Pediatricians across the world have acknowledged that screens interfere with the developmental milestones of our children, and the way they are being designed, so we can't really compare internet and screens. And when I say screens, of course, I'm referring to the phones, the iPads, the
Phones
TVs,
and
everything, the smart devices, the digital devices
hmm,
that connect us, even the things we wear, the wearables, right? We wear around us and stuff like that. Everything that connects us basically is digital. And for simplicity, we're calling it screens. But the way they are being designed today is that, it's very invasive in the way that we live. It's no longer the internet where we would just go connect, using a modem and then disconnect and come back. Life now,
yeah, our time
it's
was
very
different,
different now.
absolutely.
So that
Yes.
control that was there was the external control, wherein there was limited
Hmm.
content, there was a limited connectivity, and by default
Hmm.
you will have to disconnect because you did not have any other choice. Internet was expensive,
Yeah.
and all of that, it was a luxury to afford it. But today,
Hmm.
now that it's so omnipresent, there is 24 by 7 connectivity that impacting the growth and development of our children, right? So, first of all, we all know that technology is literally on steroids, right? I mean, every day there's a new advancement in technology, and uh, we really are finding it hard to keep pace with it. Okay. But our brains, the brains of our children is not yet ready. The brains of our children is not yet ready for such overload of information that is being thrown at them, because the part of the brain that is responsible for decision making, right, where we could understand it as a CEO of the brain, which decides about self regulation, which decides what is good, what is bad, which is the decision making part of the brain, does not develop until the late teens or early 20s, the prefrontal cortex.
Hmm.
So giving our child a smartphone and expecting them to self regulate or expecting them to watch good content is a very unreasonable ask because their brain is not yet developed for that. So that is one part of the brain development impact. Secondly, dopamine is a chemical that we all understand as the feel good or the reward chemical. The villain that it's being portrayed to, it's a very important chemical hormone neurotransmitter that our brain really needs so that we do stuff. So that's something that motivates us to do things. And traditionally, we used to get it by doing the hard things. When screens were not available, so it would be doing hard work in your office or working hard in school or some physical effort or anything that we will do which will makes us feel good and something that motivates us to do more.
Through the instant
But the
gratification that
amount
we
of
get through
dopamine that used to get
screens and
released wasn't so
yeah.
huge. Now with screens, what's happened is that there is low effort or no effort, right? You just open the screen, just slide
Hmm.
it, and it feels so good to just do
Yeah.
that. And they are designed, they're being designed by, of course, experts in neuroscience and emotional intelligence and all of that to really give us this release of dopamine, which is so easy, so no effort, first of all. And secondly, the amount of dopamine that gets released in our brain is so huge that everything outside feels dull. And when that happens, that is the reason why it's so difficult to disconnect from screens, and that's where outside world appears to be dull. So now what happens is that the way dopamine works is when we get this huge surge of dopamine in the brain, right? Now the baseline level is set so high that every time the brain craves for the same pleasure, but it needs more of that pleasure. So I'll explain it. So let's say if 30 minutes of screen time gave you pleasure in the first place, the same 30 minutes will not give you the same pleasure. So now your brain says, okay, I want 1 hour of screen time to get the same pleasure, same amount of pleasure. And that is how addictions happen,
Interesting.
you know.
Yeah.
So repeat use of screens just resets the baseline level of dopamine, and that's why the outside world looks dull. That's why slow things, makes us feel very, very
Like reading books.
exactly, because that's the real world. That's the slow. In real world, things
Yeah.
are not as
Yeah.
fast, right? In on screens, you have the ability to make it 1.2x, 3x, 5x, speak fast, do things fast. You don't like somebody, you delete them. All of that you can skip. You don't like a
Mm.
video, you skip it. But that's not how real world works.
Mm.
So, and
Mm.
that brings me to your point, what attention and focus is, that we are training our mind. So whatever we become good at what we train. right? We all know that. Now we
Yeah.
are training our minds for 90-second attention, right? What do the shorts and the reels do? 90 seconds, attention needs within 3 seconds. You need to hook a person, otherwise you lose attention. Now, what does that train our mind for? It is training our minds for distraction, right? So it's difficult to
Hmm.
hold attention for sustained periods of time. But when we practice that through mindfulness, by when we practice that through, allowing boredom into our lives, when we practice taking pause, when we practice staying away from screens, that is why we balance the online world and the offline world, and that's why the balance is important. you know
Hmm.
I also want to talk about another point as to your question as to why screens are so attractive. Why is it so difficult to stay away from screens? Is because emotionally, our children, and of course we also, but I talk specifically about children, is that we have these three basic emotional needs. One is to feel seen, right? We all like it when we are recognized. We want to be seen, we want to feel significant and successful, right? And we want to feel safe, right? That is every
Hmm.
human being's basic emotional requirement. And like it or not, but screens are meeting these needs of our children, and sometimes even better than parents, which means
Yeah.
that the stars that they get, the points, the streaks that we want to maintain is actually giving them emotional satisfaction. And when you don't get it from the outside world, you get it from the online world. That is when you crave for it, right? So one is the
It's
dopamine.
scary and sad at the same
It is
time.
scary. So one is the dopamine hit, which is such a huge amount of reward chemical. Second is the
Hmm.
emotional satisfaction. And third, very important aspect is the habit aspect of it. What is habit? Habit is patterns of behavior we do on repeat, right? And
Yeah.
three components that you really need for habits. It has to be easy, it has to be emotionally satisfying, and it has to be available. So sometimes just easy,
Hmm.
available, and is good, enjoyable becomes a habit. We repeat it. So now screens meet this criteria so wonderfully, right? And that is
Yeah.
how
Yeah.
habits, that's how screens are becoming a habit.
Great. So, diving a little bit deeper in, what is it that's more problematic? Is it the content that children are watching, or is it the duration for which they're watching, or is it something else totally that we must regulate?
No, that's a very good point. Very good question. Because very, very initially, of course, American Academy of Pediatrics also came up with certain number of hours, how much is good time, and how, by ages. And they have also recognized this, that even more than the amount of time your child spends on screens, it's the content and the context. So content is the
Oh.
nature of content that they're watching. Is it educational, or is it violent, or is it what kind of content are they watching? Is it appropriate, inappropriate? Even in content, like I always say this example, that just like our physical diet, right? We have nutritious and junk.
Hmm.
Similarly, in the content, we have very nutritious content. There is content that really uplifts you, that builds your self belief. There's so much good stuff that you can learn from the online world. But then there's also the junk content which depletes you, which makes you feel
Hmm.
loss of energy, like, which is the toxic content, which is bullying somebody or cyberbullying, or and things like that. So the content is important, and second is the context, which I spoke about, which is like, why are we doing screens? Is it satisfying an emotional need which is not being met otherwise? Is there a
Hmm.
bad day your child had
Okay.
at school, that is why they want to lose it out and escape it? So is it an escape mode? And for a lot of adults also, it's an escape mode, that if you're feeling anxious, you're like, okay, I'll just scroll a little bit.
Scroll
You
through,
had a
yes.
big hard day, so you think that you're relaxing at night by watching a video before sleeping, without realizing that it's adding to the stress and not really reducing it. So it's the why you're doing it, where are you doing it, and when are you doing it? That's more important than
Hmm.
how much are you doing it.
But how do we balance this screen time is another question that we keep, dealing with so much of academic learning and extracurricular learning happening online. And I mean, honestly, it is a time saver.
First of all, it's very important that, as I said in the beginning, we got to stop fighting it. So we got to accept and acknowledge that it's there, and it's there for good.
Hmm.
So that's number one. And then I always believe that we got to acknowledge it as a family, talking to your child about it. And it's okay to accept that, we are learning this together, And when you tell your child that, hey, we are in this together, it's not about you versus technology, it's about us versus technology, track of time. So it's
Hmm.
about coming together and starting to have those conversations. Secondly, it's about having that assessment of where are you currently. So there is again a spectrum of screen habits that we have or our children have. So it's kind of scanning your whole digital habitat to understand when does your child do screen most of the time, how much is it, why is it your child doing it. So kind of making that current state assessment is important for you to come up with a good plan which will be more sustainable, rather than coming with something which is like absolutely extreme, which your family doesn't relate with, which is not sustainable. So kind of assessing your habits, your child's habit, assessing your environment, what are the different triggers that kind of drive your child towards the screen. And then third thing is kind of developing a plan. Most of the time distractions or screens happen when you don't have anything else to do,
Hmm.
right? So coming up with a goal plan, coming up, and children love routines, children love structure, you know. So talking with them, developing healthy boundaries and
Hmm.
developing a goal plan, like now summer vacations are going to come. So having
Yes, absolutely.
it's not about having multiple
Yeah.
activities, but it's about having those big things that your child needs to achieve, let's say during the day, because children like to achieve. I spoke about dopamine, right? It makes us feel good. So how about having small little tasks in their day, for example making your bed, giving them small little points for those type of little tasks, so that they're getting their natural dopamine and they don't kind of go towards the screen. So having that structure
Hmm.
which is not imposed but discussed with them, co-created, having healthy boundaries. And I think, as a starting point, having these things in place is very, very important. And of course, then we kind of go towards building connection, because it's important. Like most of the parents say that, kids don't listen to us. So it's not a
Hmm.
screen problem, it's a connection problem, right? So then you build connection with your child, you teach them about emotional regulation. I mean, those are the things that I do teach in my program. And it's about setting healthy habits. So things that they do on repeat. And, these are some of the things that parents can do to build a healthy relationship with technology.
Just to add on to that point, I think parents do struggle in reducing screen time, but at the same time, they also don't know what to replace it
Yes.
with. Something that is, easily accessible for the child.
Absolutely. So, like we spoke about how habits are formed to make it easy and make it emotionally satisfying. Now, if your child really loves to do screens, right, how about building a habit which is conveniently blend reading and screens, right? So, for example, like before I do screen, I'm going to do like a 20-minute of reading, or I'm going to read 2 pages of this book. And when you kind of weave these things together by merging the things that they like and the habit that you want them to develop, by making it easy. So you don't have to say finish a book, but you just have to say every day reading 1 page of reading, and before you do screen time. So you kind of earn before you actually
Yeah.
do it. And I think those are the small steps that parents can do to really build those healthy habits over a period of time, right?
Also, I think model good behavior. So if parents, make it a point not to bring in screens at the dining table, then their children will learn. If they have a screen-free zone, like bedrooms are maybe screen-free zones, then, and if everybody sticks to that routine, children will follow. So I think it's also starts from the parents and how they want, what kind of habits they want their child to, imbibe and.
Absolutely, absolutely. Intention is the step one for behavior change, right? Unless and until you
Yeah.
want it for your child and yourself, it won't happen. So just by saying do not do
Yeah.
screen time, but at the same time, your environment is making it so easy and accessible and 24 by
Absolutely.
7.
Yeah.
And again, I see a
Yeah.
lot of challenges with parents, with families feel is that, you can't educate everybody in the family to use mindful screens. Now, how do you deal with that? Is basically you kind of just have those conversations with your child as to why is it important for you. Why they don't need to compare their screen habits with the others in the family, but at the same time having a conversation with all the family members that this is what you're trying to do for your child, and this is the cooperation that you seek, that certain hours during the day will be screen free hours. And I'm sure like parents, grandparents, anybody in the family would be happy to support. It's just that we have not learned how to deal
I
with.
think that's where people like you who are empowering and educating children to make the right choices come in the picture, because children, unless they really know what's happening, it is difficult for them to make the right choice, because screens are here to stay,
Yes.
right? So they just need to make the right choice.
Screens are only here to stay, and
um,
they're only getting better at distracting us. Every day
yes.
advancements are being made how to make it more addictive, to be very honest. Right? And unless you are very
Yeah.
intentional about it, you are absolutely aware as to, and unless until you are clear about the why. And I think that's what I've seen in my experience with children is that they are willing to learn about the digital world. They love it, you know so we don't have to
Yeah.
take it away from them.
Oh.
They love screens, they love it, and they're born in this world. I mean, it's for them, it's not online
Hmm.
offline. For us it was about disconnecting and connecting. It still is, right? But
Yeah.
for children it's very normal, like it's part of their world. So we don't want to
it,
take it
it
away,
is,
but we
yes.
at the same time can't leave them there, because they might be tech savvy, but they
Hmm.
still need the experience, the wisdom that parents, and educators, and caregivers can actually give to guide them. And for that, I think it's the intention and awareness is very important.
So, you have any two tips that you want to give to the parents to, build those good habits? Anything from your coaching or mentoring sessions that, stood out and you want to share it with us?
So I think the two tips I would say is that build a connection routine, some connection rituals on a daily basis, where you can be part of their online world. So you can watch videos together, you can play games together, you can understand what's the latest going on in the digital world. You can create some videos together with something which is during the day, whatever your schedule permits. And one more important aspect is that there are three big timings when you meet your child during the day. Just make that off screen. So, what I mean by that is during the morning, whenever your child wakes up, just meet them off screen, without a screen, welcoming the day. Second time is during the day, whenever, let's say, you come back from work or they come back from school, be available without screen to meet and greet for a few minutes. And the third time is the night time before they sleep. Have those conversations, have that engagement that can be without screens. So if you do these things right, and I see a lot of parents, they're like, okay, TV dheere chal raha hai, you know but it's on mute, but it is still on.
Yeah,
Doesn't work.
still
It
distracting.
has to be switched
Yes.
off. It has to be away. Just has to be you and them for a few minutes. Doesn't have to be a
Hmm.
long.
Wonderful. I think those were some great tips. Um, thank you, Pasna. I think this has been a wonderful session. I'm sure parents listening have learned a lot from this session. And habits don't build overnight, but they do begin with one small change. So try doing that. And yeah, thank you everybody for tuning in. Stay tuned and keep watching the space for the next episode. Thank you, Pasna, for being here with us and for giving us all these wonderful tips.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you, thank you. So, yes, this is me, Soumya, signing off. Bye bye.